a good, God, I about said Thursday. We have parent-teacher conferences coming up, so I'm kind of losing track of what day is what here. All right, just getting things set up. This is the bonus content I'm sure y'all came here for. And as we do this, if you have anything in the live chat feed, I know it's kind of an impromptu Thursday afternoon edition of the 200 level we're doing. Trying to sign into X because that's where we got a lot of the content for today. Oh my good God. Of course now it's not loading. Screw you, Elon Musk. Well, at least I can read it. Maybe? Oh, this is just stupid. Sorry, everybody. I'm trying to make this work here, and it's just not doing that for me. Twitter on here. Oh, let's see. I'm not really sure. I absolutely hate this platform sometimes. You'll find there's only one thing that really, truly ticks me off, and that's when technology doesn't work. Like right now. Jesus Christ. Oops, something went wrong. Try again. Let's try it one more time. All right, well, I guess we aren't using that crap. Jesus. Okay. It is the 200 level, Mike Carpenter in the basement studio, a day after Illinois falls at home to Purdue. And hey, where to begin? I'm not going to be too overly optimistic because the flaws of this team were on display yesterday, especially in crunch time. But I do want to start with Purdue and get this out of the way. If I have a bracket in front of me on Selection Sunday, when we're at Poor Brothers, by the way, cheap plug, but we'll be there 5 p.m. on Selection Sunday, and I got Purdue on one side of the bracket and I got UConn on the other, it's going to be a very easy choice for me as far as what teams are going to the NCAA championship. And with that in mind, that does make yesterday a bit of an easier pill to swallow than, let's say, at Penn State, which was a far different kind of mess that left you feeling worse about the team. I don't know if last night makes you feel any worse about the team, but what I will get into today are the legitimate concerns I think that Illini fans have about what the ceiling might be for this team. And those were, again, on display last night. But let's not kid ourselves. Purdue is, I think, the best Big Ten team since probably 2015 Wisconsin. And in fact, the metrics on KenPom like them even more than that team. That was Kaminsky and Decker, Nigel Hayes. Boy, I know there were more guys that I'm forgetting, but that team that made the national title game. This Purdue team, because of their guard play and how it has improved, and while it was not good in the first half last night, it was great in the second. They are a pick-your-poison kind of team. Zach Edey got his 28, and yet didn't even feel like that was really the reason why they won. They won because they made 8 of 10 threes in the second half, and any time that we attacked Edey and he kicked it out, they made the big shot. Braden Smith's dagger 3 is one of the more impressive dagger 3s that I can remember. That's some Io DeSumo stuff. And Synergy, which is kind of an advanced basketball statistics website, Trevor had pointed this out in our chat thread. 96% contest rate there from Terrence Shannon Jr. Like, you cannot contest that late 3 from Braden Smith any better, and he drills it. At which point, I think I looked to some folks next to us at the game and just shrugged, like, what are you going to do? So that's why we're calling this podcast Tip Your Cap, because this is a generational Purdue team. Now, they got to do it in the tournament. I think they will. And they have a chance to win the whole damn thing in a way that a lot of Big Ten teams have not. There has been good Michigan State teams. There's been Good teams, well, Illinois in 2021, not to dredge up things like that, but I would argue that this Purdue team is better and more well-rounded than that. And they have a freak down low. And I mean that as a compliment. Zach Edey cannot decide what height he is going to be. He's 7'4", but he could decide how much he's going to maximize that distinct physical height advantage and become one of the more technically proficient big men in the country. If he's 6'10", is he the best player in the country? No, he's not. Is he still really good? Yeah, probably so. But listen, Manute Bol was 7'7". He wasn't any good. George Mirasan was 7'7". He wasn't any good. Sean Bradley was 7'6". I guess he had a couple years, but really, again, not all that good. Zach Edey's good. Now, I don't know what that means for the NBA, but I do know for college basketball and this Purdue team in this year of college basketball, that is enough to win the whole damn thing. And I think they have a pretty good shot at doing that. Now, that doesn't ease the sting or bail Illinois out of their own responsibility for what they could have done last night. And they could have won that game. The problem is when you don't get enough from Terrence Shannon Jr., 11 points total, when Justin Harmon doesn't make any shots for you, it's going to be really hard to beat a team of Purdue's caliber without your big three all playing at their A level and getting something, anything from the bench. And that is probably, coupled with the 8 out of 10 from 3 for Purdue in the second half, why you lost the game. Other than that, it was a pretty evenly matched game. The home crowd at State Farm Center was terrific, I thought. Low, anxious, nervous excitement roar, especially in the early minutes. You could tell that the fans were really keyed up for it. And boy, oh boy, when Marcus Damask tied it with 4 minutes to go, that place, it was bedlam. And I just soaked it all in. And before we get to the sponsors and then before we break down this game and really what it told us or what it means going forward, I want to pause, despite the disappointment last night, and recognize how cool it is that we had that opportunity. Now, yeah, we could have won that game, and that would have been far better than the alternative. But we were playing big-time college basketball at the State Farm Center in March. And we've lost some of these big games, but we've won some of them too. That was Brad Underwood's first senior night loss in 5 years. 2 of those wins were against Iowa. The one right before COVID and the one that won you Big Ten title. Michigan last year, and I know Michigan wasn't great, but you weren't all that great down the stretch either, was a triple overtime classic. It was a blast. So we've won big games at home before. I acknowledge that it's disappointing that this year there isn't that marquee win. There's not. There have been 4 opportunities for that marquee win, 2 of them at home, Marquette and Purdue, and 2 on the road, at Tennessee, at Purdue. You went 0 for 4. And does that bode well for making a Final Four? It does not. No. Do I think this team's going to make a Final Four? No, I don't. A lot would have to go right for that to happen. I still think they can, but guess what? 68 teams can make the Final Four. And realistically speaking, 20 teams can have an okay shot compared to the other 48. I think Illinois is one of those 20 that could. Do I foresee it? No. But does this change my expectation for what I think they can and probably should do in the first weekend of the tournament? No, not necessarily. And as I walked away from the State Farm Center last night, it wasn't a feeling of emptiness so much. I mean, disappointment for sure, but it was more a feeling that, damn, we're pretty good, but Purdue's great. The best team that I've seen in a while. Better than last year's Purdue team for sure. And one where you just have to have everything go right and quite a few things go wrong for them in order to spring the upset. They're going to beat Wisconsin at home, and they're going to finish 27-3. 27-3 is nothing to sneeze at. They had a murderer's row of a non-conference, swept right through that. The Big Ten, we can argue how good it is or is not, but we could, I think, definitively say that there's not a bottom-of-the-barrel pack of 4 or 5 teams like there have been in years past. Even the bad Big Ten teams, so to speak, record-wise, could spring an upset. Purdue's going to finish the regular season 27-3. They're going to get to Sunday in the Big Ten tournament. So that's at least 29 wins before the NCAA tournament. At worst, 29-4. And I would love to think that Illinois can give them that fourth loss, and I do think we'll see a rematch the Sunday of the Big Ten tournament. But losing to them last night is not, I don't think, an indictment against Brad Underwood. I don't think it's an indictment against this Illinois program that, we just can't get over the top or we can't win big games. I don't think it's that. Let's imagine for a second if you're a Purdue fan waking up today. They aren't scoffing at that win. In this magical season that they've had, that is one of the more memorable wins for them. They're trailing by 6 at halftime. They were down by as many as 9 in the first half, but the beauty of basketball and why I love this sport more than probably any other as far as a spectator is that there are very few leads that are truly safe. It is a game of runs, and you watch it to the end because you just never know. And I can't say that for other sports. So they're watching that game last night, and from the tip of the second half, or from the beginning of the second half, they saw a different Purdue team. If you're a Boilers fan, you had to be really encouraged about how your team responded, and then that all your guys around Edey were making the plays to close that game out. I'm waking up as a Purdue fan today, if I am, I'm not, this is hypothetical, and thinking, oh yeah, this is legit. This is different than last year, where that Purdue team got a share, or did they might have won the Big Ten outright, but even with that one seed, I think that we all felt a little bit iffy about it. It felt like Edey and some dudes. Well, those dudes are a year older. A guy like Lance Jones is a huge addition, and here I think is the key of all of it. Braden Smith is an amazing point guard, and he might drive you nuts, and he's got that sort of mousy Indiana, Purdue white point guard thing that could drive you nuts, but the kid is a killer on the court. He's really good. And even after Edey leaves, Purdue's going to be a top 25 caliber team. Why? Because they have one of the best point guards in the nation already. So you mix all that together, they've got the recipe to go far. I still think Illinois has a recipe to make a run. And if anything, there are some signs last night that make me even more encouraged that depending on those first weekend matchups, they can finally get over that hump for the first time since 2005. The last time we had a generational team. Well, you played a generational team last night, and Purdue fans, if you are a Purdue fan listening to this, I don't probably have to tell you this, but appreciate this. This is something, and it will likely end with something, even if it's just a Final Four banner, which would be Painter's first. But there will be, I would guess, some tangible achievement that this team is going to have by year's end. Illinois, that remains to be written. But the good news is this. You would not face a team of Purdue's caliber until, at a minimum, the Sweet 16. You won't. And when you look at the teams that are vying for 4 and 5 seeds, the teams that you might likely face in a second-round matchup, they aren't Purdue. They aren't on Purdue's level. And if they would have hosted Purdue last night, chances are the same thing would have happened. So I asked fans today on Twitter, which isn't really working, but we'll make do. I got it up here at least. I asked fans after last night's game, are you more encouraged, less encouraged, or about the same as we get into the rest of March? And we'll get to those results in a bit. Before we get too far, though, I want to remind you that we have an awesome live event coming up. It is the 200-level Selection Sunday special at Poor Brothers Craft Tap Room in downtown Champaign. That's Selection Sunday, which is also St. Patty's Day. So, I mean, you can come in completely sloshed, and they will have, I'm sure, good Irish stouts, Guinness and otherwise, that you can drink as you listen to me and Isaac break down and react to the brackets as they are unveiled. That is Selection Sunday at Poor Brothers, the 200 level, teaming up with Champagne Showers, who are hosting for, I think, the 5th year in a row, a bracket contest. That's always a lot of fun. Prizes and all that good stuff that could be yours if you enter that bracket contest. So that is, again, Sunday, March 17th at Poor Brothers Craft Tap Room in downtown Champaign. All right, I want to hit the sponsors real quick. We have DP Dough. I'm on at dpdough.com for all the best deals and prices. dpdough.com. Custom zones with any topping you want, or one of their favorites like the Maui Wowie or the Buffer Zone. They deliver anywhere in Champaign-Urbana, so go online to dpdough.com and order today. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com. For life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. The cool thing about State Farm that these larger insurance companies can offer is really any kind of insurance that you could think of, And Brian is the perfect person to talk to work you through your options. You're going to get great State Farm rates, of course, but it's the customer service from Brian and his staff that make them second to none. Me and Kara trust Brian with all our insurance needs, and I can vouch personally for him. You can as well. That's Brian is my guy. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Give them a call today at 217-841-4728. Here's the deal they got going on. $1,000 off of any Bradford white water heater, Rinnai tankless water heater, or Bosch mini split unit when you buy a Lennox home comfort system. That's just it. $1,000 savings, no gimmicks, no hidden fees. Give Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing a call today at 217-841-4728. That's 217-841-4728. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. And finally, Owen Builders LLC. Online at owenbuildersllc.com. Home additions, patios, decks. We're getting to that season where you might want to get that renovation project started. You can get a free quote from Luke and his staff and check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Also, Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Appreciate them. Got a couple of things in the YouTube feed. First from Justin. Man, last night was electric. Would have been more nuts if we had an Illini win. The farm was rocking. Justin, it was. I tweeted last night, just a feeling of gratitude. The older you get, when you become an old ball of dust like me at 37, you appreciate moments. And, of course, you hope to have all those moments be perfect and win every game. That's not realistic. Last night, it was going to be tough, despite what Vegas said and despite the fact that I felt a win going in. And, boy, it sure looked like for the first 20 minutes, I think we can do this. State Farm was rocking last night. It was the loudest when Marcus Demas, that tough SOB, ties the game up. Like single-handedly. Was it a 6-0 run by him? The guy gets in a zone. He is so fun to watch. And I hope we get as many games as we can, partially so I can keep seeing him do his thing, because he is on a certain level right now. Now, let's talk about the State Farm atmosphere, because this was a bit of a kerfluffle last night on Twitter. The Orange Crush, and I ran into one of the Orange Crush members who said, "Hey, Carp, love the podcast." And I said, "Hey, appreciate it." And I think in the past may have talked about the Orange Crush, depending on a certain cheer or something, saying, come on. I know last night that they had a controversial cheer, and it's not something that I was like, way to go, guys, but it was F. Zach Edey. Okay. I have other things to be more offended by. You could argue, rightly so, I'm sure, that it was not the classiest thing to say. It doesn't bother me at my core. I would not have put that as my first thing to chant when you're playing Purdue. It did reek a little bit of, is that all we got? The same way that when Terrence goes on the road and he gets no means no, and you're thinking, okay, this is the 8th student section. There has to be a more creative way than no means no. But listen, it's a college fan base. It's students, many of whom are presumably good and liquored up. When my friend Ben and I went to the Illinois-Iowa game in 2006, so this is Dee and James senior night, great atmosphere. That was a pretty decent Iowa team with Greg Bruner, and Illinois won. It was a thrilling game. It was just classic Assembly Hall noise levels. And that Orange Crush, and I was part of it, we were just a liquored up, rowdy bunch of crazy jerks. That's what we were. The things we said to Greg Bruner, I wouldn't repeat in front of my own mom, and she's heard me say cuss words before. That's fandom. And then they were chanting about the DUI that Mason Gillis had a couple years ago. Well, Greg Doyle, who is a writer for the Indianapolis Star, and he's been around for a long time. He's a really good sports writer. He's one of the he's up there in terms of sports writers in the country, based on a long work history that shows this guy can cover almost anything. And he's stayed local to Indianapolis, which is pretty cool. But he was there yesterday covering Purdue, because this is a Purdue team worth covering. And his story wasn't about Purdue's second half excellence. It was about how cruel the Illini fan base was. Now, he's already written one earlier this year about Maryland. He basically castigated the entire Maryland fan base, which, of course, they have a bad reputation. But I don't care. Fans Fans should be allowed to be jerks. I was at the Eric Gordon game. That was fun. It was immature. It was rude and crass and vulgar. Boo freaking who? It's entertainment. It's our modern day equivalent of gladiatorial sport, which I guess football literally is that. But here we are in this big rotund State Farm Center that's like a spaceship crossed with the Roman Colosseum, and we're frothing at the mouth. God forbid we say the F word before we say Zach Edey, and God forbid we bring up Mason Gillis's DUI. But of course, Greg Doyle takes it a step further. Not without reason, but he was noting the irony that Illinois fans were doing this when they had a player playing with a rape charge. Now, we have not talked about Terrence and the rape charge all that much recently on the 200 level because it's like, well, kind of is what it is, and we'll know when we know. And what I said after he came back was, now that he's playing again, we're going to kind of just call it as it happens, and I'm not going to turn it into a, hey, rah-rah, Terrence is innocent. So no, I don't think that would be the right thing to do because we don't know if he's innocent or guilty. But that being the case, I found it interesting that Greg Doyle is trying to liken a DUI conviction with a rape charge. Now, this is not to compare or contrast the two crimes, but it is to say one was a conviction and one was a charge. One was proven in court or with data and documents or a blood alcohol test, and one is still being adjudicated upon. If I'm using that word correctly, I'm not good with legalese. Regardless, there's a few things wrong with Greg Doyle going that direction. The first of which is, dude, you're covering Purdue. You're covering basically the best team in the country, not named UConn, and really they're more 1A and 1B. And that's your takeaway? Greg Doyle is one of those that, even as someone that's probably a liberal person myself, I am, he's one that is always finding, I think, sometimes low-hanging fruit as far as social issues are concerned to tie into a sports coverage. And it's not that sports and social issues cannot commingle, but it did reek a little bit last night of, oh, well, okay, I need to make a big to-do about this because this is clearly wrong and this is not appropriate for our, I don't know. It just seemed to reek of, I'm the good guy. I'm the good guy sports journalist, and this was not right, and these fans were cruel and mean. And, oh, my God, spare me. Spare me. Drunk 18 to 22-year-olds saying vulgarities at the opposing team, that's sports. You've seen it, Greg. Why is that the takeaway? Just very weak sauce from him. I called it out. What does it matter? He's at a far different tier of sports coverage than I am. That is to say, much more accomplished than I am. But I just thought that was weak sauce from a guy that's got a long history of writing a lot of good stuff. And again, is this about him going at Terrence? No, it's not, because Terrence, I don't want to say deserves, but is understandably getting these chances on the road. That doesn't bother me. That's the deal. That's the deal. Now, Zach Edey, in fairness, didn't do anything to get a Zach Edey chance. By all accounts, great guy. We actually saw his mom walking down to the stands, and I'm sure that's not the first place she heard it, but I did have that moment, and maybe it's the teacher in me, or me becoming an old softy, I don't know, but thinking, like they're chanting it, and his mom's right there, and she seems like a nice lady, and he's a nice guy. What did he ever do to get F Zach Edey? Like, can you come up with some? I will say this, and I know, like, Charlie in my Twitter account, Charlie Fillenworth, and a few other people mentioned, like, just be more creative. I would agree with that, okay? This is the old University of Illinois, I got a diploma shtick is going to come in for a second. We got smart kids at this school. It's a great school. And, you know, we can puff our chest out occasionally about academics when you're playing certain Big Ten schools, maybe not Purdue, because they're a really good academic school. But, you know, like decorum and I don't like to use the word classy because that's overused. But, yeah, just like there's got to be a more intelligent way to go after the player of the year than F you. He's tall. Yeah, it reminds me in Pulp Fiction when they talk about Tony Rocky Horror, and then Sam Jackson's like, well, he's got a weight problem. What's he going to do about it? And I'm thinking about like Zach Edey, and yes, it has bothered me before. There were plays last night where it bothered me, where he just has to reach up, dunk it. Well, it's not his fault. Go recruit your own 7'4" big man. He might be out there, and you can develop him into the next Zach Edey. Don't worry, everybody, every Big Ten fan. There's another 7'1" guy in the wings waiting to replace him, because of course there is. Hey, Big Ten teams have had a decade now to go get their own 7-foot guy to compete with whoever Purdue trots out there. They just haven't. So it's an advantage, but that's not Matt Painter's fault, and that's not Zach Edey's fault. And Zach Edey is one of those rare examples where, I don't know, he's maximizing every bit of his talent. And that's kind of hard to hate on. And I don't know, yeah, he had the stare down of Coleman. Fine. You know, there was something that Robert Rosenthal said yesterday that I agree with, where there is a darker tinge to Purdue this year. They're carrying a bit of an edge, and good for them. I mean, they didn't have it last year, and they lose to FDU. And what do? They channel that into, okay, enough. We need to go out there and do this. And I do think there's a redemptive kind of quality, and maybe akin to what Virginia did a few years ago, where you had the ultimate embarrassment, but you bring everybody back for a do-over, and you come out all the more focused and ready to go. I won't go so far as to say I'm rooting for Purdue, because guess what? I'm sick and freaking tired of losing to Purdue. I'm tired of them costing us Big Ten titles in both revenue sports, because they basically cost you a football title last year, and then their dominance in the last 4 or 5 years has cost you probably another Big Ten title in basketball. I'm sick of it, but Matt Painter's earned it, and that's 20 years now of coaching where he's built this program, and there was a bit of a valley there about 10 years into it, but, man, they're cooking now. And it would be cool to think that 10 years from now, for example, we're really deep into the Underwood tenure, and we look back at, yeah, well, those years were pretty good, but, man, there was that team right in front of us. But now we've got the team that every single year is on top. Yeah, that's why I think yesterday, and looking at the season as a whole, and even now looking back to the Penn State game, right? Penn State's the best team, or sorry, no, they aren't. Against Illinois, they often are. Purdue's the best team in this conference, full stop. And you're the second best team, but there is some distance there. Now, the good news is the third and the fourth do come after you, and you have a little bit of distance, not just in the standings, but I think in terms of the metrics on KenPom, in terms of the eye test, in terms of just the playmakers you have. That's a good spot to be in. Is it the best? No. Is that Brad Underwood's fault, or is it credit more to Matt Painter? I'd say more credit to Matt Painter, who has had basically 20 years to build this thing, and this is the peak of his coaching tenure. Now, for Illinois' perspective, what last night means, I think, is, okay, you're really good. Like, you're top 12. You're 12th in the country. I think you're top 12. That doesn't mean you're going to get a 3 seed. You probably won't, because you don't have that marquee win. But I would say that, yeah, we are – I could not think of 12 teams right now that are better than Illinois on a good night. And I do think after the UConns and the Purdues and the Houstons and maybe the Arizona, though I want to be in Arizona's bracket if you get a choice of a 1 seed, there's quite a bit of drop-off after that. So this year, as far as the NCAA tournament and top 4 and top 5 seeds, I think it's going to be relatively scratch and fairly easy to predict who's going to end up where. Illinois, after last night, is firmly entrenched as a 4 seed, barring anything too crazy. And you know what? Winning at Iowa would go a long way in solidifying that 4. Probably not going to get a 3, so then it just comes down to matchups. But the question that I asked people after last night was if you were more encouraged or less encouraged, or about the same. And I got the results here after I get to Mark's thing here in the YouTube chat, where he said, I don't like DeMass slowly working the ball across midcourt, taking 8+ seconds each time. Wasted 4 minutes of game time and mentally slows us down. That's 4 trips missed. Get the ball across and get going. Mark, there was a moment I saw that Harmon had the ball and could just dribble it across half court, but clearly the team is being told, let Marcus bring it up. I don't disagree with that, Mark. I think that when Illinois was at their peak yesterday, that game from, let's say, let's just call it the first half, though I really do think the peak for Illinois was probably from about the 12-minute mark to the 4-minute mark of that first half. It felt like we were really starting to get into a groove offensively. And the pace, I felt, was being more established by Illinois, kind of forcing the issue. I like that. I would agree that the game kind of slowed to a snail's pace, it felt like, in that second half. Purdue, of course, tightened up on defense. They made some good adjustments. They basically prevented Terrence from getting to the rim, and when they did, they made it really difficult for him. And sometimes it felt like all you were left with was booty ball, which Marcus was very good at. But I would agree, Mark. I think that that was one thing that Underwood could have done yesterday, and also just throughout the game, continue to let others bring it up the court. One time he let Quincy bring it up the court. I thought, you know what? That's kind of weird, but no one was guarding Quincy. Makes sense. And anything to let Marcus just conserve that energy. Because I would imagine every time that he does the post-up booty ball stuff, it takes a lot of energy from a guy. And, you know, however fit you are, you only got so many good shots that you're going to get up before you start losing your legs a little bit. So, Mark, I agree with that. I think another, if I can call it a blunder, and it didn't cost you the game, but Amani Hansberry comes in to give you fouls. I get it. I thought Dane gave you some good minutes in the first half. I don't understand why that wasn't Dane in there. Dane's the bigger body. He only had one foul. And I just thought that was a weird choice by Underwood when you had a guy with Dane that can body up Edey, and then on the other side has the ability to score, and he did a couple times against Edey. So that seemed weird. I know that Dane had a turnover, maybe even two, but Amani Hansberry missed a three. That was essentially a turnover. I like Amani and I like the confidence, but that was essentially a turnover. And 4 fouls in about 3 minutes? After the second foul, it's not cute. Get the big out there that's more seasoned, that's already won against Edey before, and just see what happens. Very puzzling move. The Nicolo Moretti minutes, I understand, because Terrence had foul trouble. Those are the only two rotational things that I didn't quite understand. I didn't really have too many issues with Underwood last night, and here's the pick your poison dilemma that a lot of Illini fans are talking about today. Some of the teachers I work with, they said, yeah, you know, I wish we would have just let Edey get his in the second half. And I said, I get that, but man, at halftime, I'm talking to my dad, and I said to him, just like the start of this game, I think you got to swarm him a bit. I think you got to force the issue and make the guards beat you, because Edey was cooking that second part of the first half. And it felt like, okay, well, that's a sure two for them basically every possession. We got to do something about that. And we did. But Purdue countered by going 8 for 10 from 3. Some contested, some not so well contested because you were swarming. Pick your poison, guys. I don't know. I mean, Purdue finished with 78 points. They've had far more this year. You've, I think, played relatively good defense given how good they are. And it took them 8 threes in the second half to get the 78. I felt like they had the labor themselves. But that's, again, when I called this podcast Tip Your Cap, that's kind of it. I mean, I shrug here. If you're not watching the YouTube, I'm shrugging because I don't know. What the hell do you do? If you don't swarm Edey, he's going to end up with 40. And they're still probably going to hit a 3 or 2. So, and then the things like the caroms off the rim that went a little bit too far and a little bit out of reach. Those are the things that those 50-50 balls and games like that, you need to win about 80% of them if you're going to beat a team like Purdue, and you didn't. So you replay that game 10 times, ask yourself, how many times did Illinois win that game in 10? At State Farm Center. Same conditions as last night. Maybe 5, but I get the feeling Purdue might win 6 out of 10. I just think they're that good of a team, and that the home court advantage can only get you so far when a team has that many weapons. We've had a few teams in my lifetime that I felt almost that invincibility that Purdue fans probably feel right now. This Illinois team's not one of those, but they have a unique skill set that allowed them to stay in this game and is going to allow them to be, I think, competitive in any NCAA tournament game, no matter how good the team is that they're facing. I understand, as we get to the comments here in a bit on Twitter, why a lot of people look at last night and they think, well, great, we're never going to beat a really good team this year. Yeah, you're 0 for 4 against the really good teams. You are. 2 against Purdue, Marquette, Tennessee. But as Harry Black would never say, back on 93.5, he hates this, but man, one of these days against a really good team, aren't you due to hit your threes and have your big three going and match that with the defensive intensity that we saw against Purdue? And if so, yeah, You are not a team that one seed would want to face. Of course they're going to have an advantage. They're a freaking one seed. If you make the Sweet 16, they're the one seed, you're the 4 or 5. Yeah, they got the advantage. And they should have the advantage because they've done it for 30-plus games throughout the year. But in a 40-minute basketball game, if certain things happen, you bet. And I want to be able to take that chance. I want this team to be able to get to the second weekend and take that chance against a presumed one seed, whoever that may be. And it's not going to be Purdue. They wouldn't do that as far as matchups are concerned. We won't be in their bracket. So take some solace in that. Hope you aren't in UConn's bracket because they're freaking on one again. And take your chances against a Houston team that can defend, but it's not great at scoring. And you can score. Not sure how you can defend. And in Arizona, this is very Big Ten, Pac-12. What the hell? Take your shot. But this gets to the Twitter question I had today. And first, actually, Justin, let's see what you said here. You agree that we'd win 4-10. Yeah, I don't feel confident enough in saying that we'd split. They're just really good. From Mark, we seemed reluctant to fire threes after halftime, which is a big part of our offense. 0 for 6, I think, in the second half. Got to keep chucking. Mark, I don't disagree. It might have been in the first half, I think, but there was a three that Harmon passed up, and he drove it and turned it over. Or he did turn it over, maybe not that possession, but he missed a layup or a drive when Edey was down there. And I thought, shoot the freaking three. There were a couple possessions where we got a little pass happy. It's like, don't do that. Chuck it. Quincy was making his. Luke hit one. Coleman hit one? I don't have the box score in front of me. You weren't really hitting him, but you weren't really taking a whole lot either. So I wasn't watching that game thinking, oh, guys, come on, quit chucking it. Quite the opposite, like you said, Mark. You shot well before, so why stop now? All right, the Twitter feed that's actually working here. Listener mailbag. Here was the poll, and we got some replies here that we'll get to. Did the Illini loss to Purdue leave you more or less encouraged as we continue into March? And the three options I had were more encouraged, less encouraged, and about the same. We got 325 responses. 23% said more encouraged after last night. 18% said less encouraged. And I included this option. Didn't think it'd get this many, but 58.5% said about the same. Here is a rundown of some of the responses we got. This is from Ethan. Hey, Ethan. Mike, here's the rub. You, Robert, someone else is talking about how last night was the greatest atmosphere since ... I'm having a bit of an existential crisis. If the team can't get up for a good game like last night with a crowd like it was, are we just not good enough? And Ethan, I replied to you like this, but I'll say it here again. I think it's more simple. Purdue's really, really good. I thought Illinois brought it last night. I thought the intensity was there. I thought the focus was there. There were a few turnovers and plays that you thought, oh, come on. But for the most part, Illinois played a clean game. That's why it was such a good back and forth. And I'm seeing my brother-in-law and my sister and my niece. I'm like, hey, this is going to go down to it. The last minute, these are two teams playing a high level right now. And that's what it was. I mean, if you really reflect on that game, that was a high-level game from start to finish. And you had your great first half, and they had their great second half. And when you balance those two things out, their great is better than your very good. So I think it's that simple, Ethan. And I'm not having an existential crisis about that. I understand why, for fans like you and I, Ethan, that are about a similar age, we do remember a time when we were invincible at the State Farm Center or Assembly Hall. And the one thing about the Underwood era that has taken me a bit of time to kind of reconcile with is, wow, we don't win every single home game. I mean, even though we've been really good overall the last 4 or 5 years, we'll lose these home games that make you go, huh? I do think that's more symptomatic of college basketball. Yes, Purdue is on a heater winning home games at Mackey, but the last 2 years they've also been great, so I think they've only lost one game at home in that time. Maybe not, none at all, I'm not sure. But if you look around, the home court advantage seems to be less and less of a factor, and I think that just speaks more to the parity of college basketball. Home court on average gives you 3 points. And when you're just very good, like I think Underwood's teams have been, with maybe one great team mixed in there, you're going to have these stumbles that make you and I think, well, wait a second. I thought you had the great atmosphere. Why aren't you winning this game? It doesn't make sense. Yes, It should be, or it would be nice if it was as easy as, man, the crowd is keyed up and it's the best it's been in years. Therefore, we're going to help carry them to victory. And if they would have won last night, that would have been one of the first things that was shouted out in the press conference. The crowd after Damas tied it up. Again, people could poo-poo that. A Purdue fan could say, we're a bunch of losers. Talking about when they tied the game with 4.5 minutes to go. But listen, I'm old enough to appreciate when these opportunities come, and I hope we win a lot of them, but I will understand that we won't win all of them either. But that moment, it was bananas. I didn't even verbally cheer because I'm just looking around, smiling like an idiot, and I'm seeing this is basically home. I've been going to these games now for 30-plus years, and this is what keeps us coming back, these moments. And it's that community and the camaraderie. And yeah, we're a fan base that probably drives others nuts, but it's our fan base. We are Illini fans. This is our lot in life, and we aren't changing it. So all that meatball stuff that comes with fandom, that's there. And when you lose a game like that, you think, what the hell is that about? But then you just take a step back and let the emotion reside a little bit. And remember that Purdue is literally the second best team in the country, if not the first on certain given nights. And it would take a yeoman's effort to get that win. I thought the effort and the focus was there. Ultimately, execution in terms of shot making was not. And it was really more shot making. Can that bother you that much? Of course, eventually you say, just make a damn shot. But I don't know. The shots they were making, I shrugged more than once in the last few minutes of that game. What are you going to do? What the hell? I mean, they played like an elite team. They really did. So that's my take on that, Ethan. From Team Vulture, high floor, limited ceiling. Yeah, limited ceiling in that so many things that have to go right for this team to make like a Final Four run, and I think that would include a path opening up for them. I'm not going to pull that off the table. I think the high floor is because you do have a guy like Damas that can seemingly now score at will, and you have Terrence that most nights is scoring 25 points. Last night was a problem, and we haven't talked about Terrence yet, and a subpar performance. You can't have 11 points from your All-American in a game like that. Not when Zach Edey's getting 28. There's no one on Purdue that should have been able to D up Terrence like that. So that is a frustration because, okay, this is your last home game at Illinois. This is it. That was your best shot? He had a few threes that didn't go in. They didn't look particularly great. He's made those before, but last night they just weren't on. And he attacked a few times in the second half, but I just felt like not enough. And when he did late, it was just kind of discombobulated. So that was an odd performance from someone that the last 3 weeks has been on a heater and a half. Purdue's better than any of those teams you faced, but I don't think they have any individual defender that was that much better than what other teams are throwing at you. So that was puzzling. And I do think the high floor, limited ceiling, you talk about Vulture, I would agree with that on the whole. From Evan. About the same. I think we showed that we can play with a little more intensity defensively in big games. I agree with that, Evan. Purdue made the cold-blooded shots when it mattered, and we didn't. That was really the only difference. I don't mind Harmon being in there late. There's been a decent amount of games he's helped us win late. It just wasn't his night last night. I, however, rather see Quincy late than Luke, especially last night. Agree with Quincy. Let's talk about Quincy and Harmon. Quincy, engaged. Engaged Quincy's a good Quincy. And not just because he was making threes, but he just looked looser out there and not aloof. He was just more active, I felt like. There were a couple defensive possessions and rebounds I felt he should have gotten, but he's not a guy that's going to bat perfectly out there. He was really good, though. Justin Harmon, I was having this conversation with Trevor and Isaac last night. Like you said, Evan, there's been games he's helped you win, and there's been late games where it's like, what does he even do out here? I thought that defensively he was fine and gave you a nice little spark, though the away from the ball foul, which is a weak call. He grabbed the guy, but how often is that called? Nonetheless, as the older guy, you just got to avoid being put in situations like that. And Underwood mentioned basically the same thing in his press conference. From Chase, it was a game of inches. They went 80% from three in the second half. Hate the no-call hack and the subsequent taught that should have put Edey out for minutes where he drew our collapse and they cooked us from three. We aren't facing Big Ten refs and 7'5" basketball anomalies in the bracket. Fair chase. You're talking about the block on Coleman. From the 200 level seats we were in, it was a hard block. It was a physical block. I've seen that called a foul 9 times out of 10. You could argue that it was all ball as well. So that was the benefit of the doubt being given to Zach Edey there. That part is annoying. He's making a play, but it would be nice to get the benefit of the doubt ourselves because Coleman's a pretty good player. Coleman forced the issue there and said, okay, try to block me. And he got all of Edey, but not enough, I guess, to warrant a foul. Yeah, Chase, that was frustrating. It would have made a difference. The ultimate difference, perhaps. Didn't get that call. There was still plenty of time left, and I don't look back on that as I might do other individual calls in my life as an Illini fan and think, boy, that really screwed you out of that one. But if you're doing alternate history, it would have certainly changed things. From Jacob, about the same. Purdue game was a bummer, but I hope that it gives the team a hunger or edge the rest of the way. The most encouraging sign was Quincy. If they can play like this the rest of the way, we can make a run. Beat Iowa with that hunger, and it sets up for an awesome March. Jacob, yes. Beat Iowa. You don't? And yeah, I start thinking, oh boy, what do we got here? I know Iowa is playing better, and I know they can score. I know they're playing for their tournament lives. But Iowa's not as good as the teams that you will face in the tournament, at least in the second round. They aren't. They are not 4 or 5 seed caliber. So if we are going to fancy ourselves a second weekend team, which I think this team is, you beat Iowa. You just do. And I like the little extra time. If this were a Thursday night against Purdue, then a Sunday, I'd be a little bit, hangover effect or whatever you want to call it. But it's only Wednesday. They have time. Today, I'm sure, was a day off, chill, recover, and then tomorrow you start prepping for Iowa. Iowa's had the whole week. Maybe we get a little bit of rest because that's very interesting that they get a bye before that. That doesn't bother me. In fact, I kind of like it in Illinois' favor. From number 1, chair shot villain, I'm about the same, although I was very concerned that Terrence was very much a non-factor. I don't know if it was just Purdue doing a great job or what, but you can't have your stars disappear in these kinds of games. That's just it, chair shot. He does that in the tournament, you're going home. So get it out of your system now and hope that that isn't a major reason why your season ultimately ends. From Justin, about the same, slightly less encouraged. We have shown we can play with the elite teams in the country, but we're now 0-4 in those games and 0-2 at home. I believe we have a shot to beat anyone in the country, but my confidence that we will make the plays to win in the tourney took another hit. All fair, Justin. That's totally fair, especially when you're talking about elite teams, which, again, hopefully you wouldn't have to face until second weekend, if you make it there. From Blockhead, about the same. Purdue is a legit Final Four team. Blockhead, absolutely. Yes, they are. We're right there. We just never got over the hump of beating a great team this season. Marquette, Tennessee, Purdue. Winning one of those would have me more confident. Still think we're a Sweet 16 team, but it won't be easy. Nope, it won't. But I could not agree more with everything you said, Blockhead. From Steven, less encouraged because we couldn't win this game or any other quad 1A type game. Last year had its flaws, but the ceiling seemed a bit higher with stifling defense and ability to make large runs. Still a couple more chances, but my faith is slightly diminished. All fair, Steven. And another one from Ethan. I'm both proud and disappointed that I'm not still pissed off about the game last night, but we got to move on and play the next one. It is a weird feeling to wake up after a game like that, Ethan, and not be like, oh, no. You know, to give you an example, Maryland 2020. It was a Friday night game, and it was like, oh, wow, like we can actually be in the Big Ten race with a win here. We can take control of the Big Ten race with a win against Maryland and Michigan State. And that game started off so good. DeMonte's hitting threes. You're up like 10, and then they bum rush you. And I remember waking up the next day. That next day sucked. I was really down about it. And then, of course, when Io's knee presumably exploded against Michigan State, the next day felt like someone in the family had died. So why is it we woke up today and didn't feel that way? I think, again, it's just the knowledge that, okay, Purdue is that team. You gave them your best shot. There are concerns to be had for Illinois, but, Ethan, I don't think there are any new concerns. And you weren't really playing for a Big Ten title. They aren't losing to Wisconsin at home. They aren't. You've seen Wisconsin. They're toast. They're dead. They are not going to win at Mackey. That's a victory lap for Edie and those guys on Sunday. They're going to make the most of it and have a lot of fun at Mackey, beating Wisconsin by at least 15 points. So, no, the Big Ten title wasn't happening. That was the case from the Penn State game. It did have me looser last night. The Iowa game 2 years ago, when you had a Big Ten title on the line and you only had 2 hours to prep for it, I was surprised. No, not to get nasty. I was surprised I even pooped that week, to be honest, because I was so tied up in knots that game. And I wanted a Big Ten title so badly. And that was not the case last night. Sorry to bring poop into the conversation. Maybe that's a 200 level first. From Jared, I'm about the same. Last night proved to me I'm not really worried about just our defense in March, but one way or another, we haven't found a way to beat a top-tier team this season. Can we beat a quality team in the round of 32 or beyond? Haven't really proven it yet. Jared, you know what's weird about that is we haven't really gotten opportunities against 4 or 5 seeds. They've either been a 1 seed in Purdue, a 2 seed, borderline 1 seed in Tennessee. That's probably the 5th best team in the country, right below the top 4. And Marquette's at worst a 3 seed. So you haven't played the 4s and 5s because they don't really exist. Wisconsin would have been, but now they're like a 7. Michigan State should have been, but they just have kind of been whatever this year. You know the talent's there. Northwestern's an 8 or 9. Nebraska, the way they're playing and the way they were playing here, I don't think is all that different from what you'd get in a 4-5 matchup. It sounds silly to even mention Nebraska in that breath, but I do think that that's kind of the level they're at. But yeah, it's been weird though, Jared, because the Big Ten's better top to bottom, but it doesn't have a really solid A tier. It's got Purdue, and then Illinois can be really good, and then some stuff, and then some lesser stuff. That's basically the Big Ten this year. A few more here. Ricky Bobby says, the fact that Coleman pointed out we will win these types of games in the tournament shows weakness. It means he knows the pressure is on. I think the pressure on these kids caused really by their coach will be too much this March. I don't think they can overcome it. Ricky, I hope that, let's say, a Marcus DeMass that's only a 1-year guy doesn't feel that, and a Quincy doesn't feel that, and a Justin Harmon doesn't feel that, and that can ease the tension that especially Coleman might feel. This team doesn't, to me, I don't know why I feel this way. They don't feel like one that's going to allow that pressure to completely alter the way they play. I mean, if anything, they should have felt a little bit of pressure last night, and I thought they were loose and played well and looked good. So when it comes down to a tournament game, I really think it's just if they get that first win, right? I really do think it's the first win because Chattanooga a couple years ago, it didn't even feel like a win. You know, you survived. Oh, what's your reward for that? Playing Houston that probably should have been a 2 seed. Thanks. Let's say you get a good win in the first round, right? A good win. Because Drexler back in 2021, that's not it. That's a 16 seed. A good win against a pesky 13 seed, but you beat them by 13, 14 points. Okay, guys, take a breath. Who do we got on Sunday? Oh, Washington State. Okay, great. Let's go. BYU. Okay, cool. What's another team that might be there? Oh, shoot. Well, we'll see whenever those come out. But I do think and hope, Ricky, that can be alleviated. From Banana Champagne, about the same. It's not surprising. I'm slightly more encouraged that Illinois looks like they can rise to the challenge against top-ranked teams. Losing to the number 3 team by under 10 is promising. Yeah, I agree with that. David says, I hate that we can't or very rarely win high-profile games. I'm tired of moral victories. We have to break through. A couple of bad bounces, too many unforced errors, stepping out of bounds 4 times. That is a problem, David. That can happen. It's maddening. David, that's all legit. That feeling that you have, I understand the frustration because it does feel that way sometimes that, well, we haven't gotten the big win. Again, I would argue that we have gotten big wins. I think that when you take those up through early last year, boy, we got big win after big win after big win after big win. And then from basically mid-December on from last year, we didn't really get big wins. And then this year, it took a while, but then you strung some solid wins together. But the Big Ten did not allow for marquee wins other than Purdue. There's not another Big Ten team that would have felt like a marquee win this year. There's just not. I mean, beating Northwestern at home by 30 should be a bigger deal because they're an NCAA tournament team. But It's Northwestern. That's not going to scratch that itch. So I understand what you mean, David. I wish there were more of those like marquee moments, and hopefully they're still to come. I just don't know if the schedule, other than the 4 games that, yeah, it would have been nice to get one of them. It didn't afford many other opportunities from that to really feel great about it. I think at Michigan State, and I know they're struggling, that was one that would have made you feel even better about this season. Sweeping them, getting that road win, not collapsing, and then winning at Penn State. Let's say you flip those 2 games and we're feeling different. And those aren't even marquee necessarily. That's it, except for a couple of nudes and bio tweets. By the way, we're a family-friendly podcast. For any parents that follow our tweets, don't let the kids see it anymore, because now there's all these bots putting nudes in the replies. Unbelievable. I'm just here to talk sports. Cassandra 0789. All right, this is from K. Andrew. Oh, okay, yes, it's true. It's okay, Carp. Everybody poops. So sorry for that reference. Sean, felt that we went too heavy with the mask booty ball in the second half. And Sean, I think the booty ball worked, but to Mark's point earlier, just get into it quicker. And from Anthony, we just can't win a big game. How can we be confident it happens in the tournament? Again, Anthony, I don't think you need to win that big of a game in the first 2 rounds, because you won't be playing a team of Purdue's caliber. But there are other games this year that, yeah, should have you leery about a potential second-round matchup. And, yeah, we got to see it. It's weird. It's like we know it can happen. Why hasn't it yet? Are we due? Can we go with that narrative and just say we're due for that big win and we're going to get it in the second weekend or the second round? I'd hope so. All right, everybody. Went a little longer than I thought because it's not as much fun to talk after losses, but I'm going to decide Sunday whether to do a live pod or not. I would love to do it out in the garage because that's where I watched the Wisconsin game. Not out of superstition, but I really, as the weather warms up and we're getting to March Madness, I got such a nice nook out there, but I got to figure out how to get the internet service good enough to stream out there. So I got Saturday to do that. And if I can figure it out, I would like to do the Iowa game second half with a cigar and a drink in my garage, and hopefully we can celebrate an end of the regular season win against our hated rivals from Iowa City. But I appreciate the YouTube folks that came in today. Do me a favor, YouTube folks, before you log off, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and hit that thumbs up. The like helps us. And we've had some new people discover the YouTube feed, so we're gradually building that thing, and it's thanks to all of you for doing that. So, Justin, I got a Wi-Fi. It's, oh, God, what's the name of it? TK something rather. It's like, I don't know if it's a mesh unit, but it is an extender, a Wi-Fi extender. The problem is that I got to figure out where to place it so it would get out to the garage far enough. I'm going to try that, and we're going to see if we can't get that to work. But I'm not that far from the garage anyways when I do that. So I'm half tempted to just get a damn wire and like crack open the window ever so slightly from the living room and just, boom, feed it out to my garage. I have enough to get the TV feed, and that's download speed, but I also need the upload speed to get the video stream. If you go back and look at our Illinois, Missouri podcast from December, I think it's basically in like not even standard definition. It's the fuzziest looking video you've ever seen when we were out there having cigars and watching us smoke Missouri. So well, we're going to give it a shot, though, because I really kind of want to be out there for March. And not to be superstitious, but I want to know out there. And it's like, okay, well, like if I'm out there and we beat Iowa, then I'm just going to camp out there for the month of March. I've seen some bad losses down here. I've seen some big wins, but I've also seen some March losses that really stink. So let's switch up the spot. Before we get out of here, got to thank DP Doe, online at dpdoe.com. Got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen, brianismyguy.com. Got to thank Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. TP-Link, that's what I have, guys. I have a TP-Link little extender box. I'm going to mess around with that this weekend and see if I don't have any luck. So thank you for the recommendations on that. And then if that works, then voila, we got something cooking. But we'll be back on Sunday, I presume, for an Iowa second half podcast. Why not? We will if it's here at the garage. And don't forget, we are 11 days away from Selection Sunday. We'll be at Poor Brothers in downtown Champaign for Selection Sunday from 5 o'clock. And hey, if Illinois is in the Big Ten tournament final, and I tend to believe they will be, We'll be out there for the game, and we'll do the second half. We'll do the whole darn shebang. In the meantime, everybody, have a great rest of your week and a great weekend, and hopefully we cap it off together on Sunday evening with a win at Iowa. It is the 200 level. All right, thanks, YouTube. On your way out, if you can, again, subscribe and like the video, much appreciated. And thanks for the tips on the Wi-Fi mesh stuff, guys. I appreciate that. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.